Welcome to another fast version of one of my portraits. This is another person portrait, and this happens to be one of our family members who had passed away recently. So this was a very nice memorial for her and her husband to receive this. So usually I would start with a pan pastel for a background, for a full background like this. But this background is so busy and so tight that it really doesn't make sense for me to go and plaster it with the pan pastel or base it out, because they're just sort of small areas and it just doesn't really make any sense. It's not going to save me any time basing all of that out. Now, with so many subjects within this, there's only two main subjects, but sometimes you will get ones that, you get 3 or 4 subjects within it, and it can get quite confusing. So it's better when you're working like this to really focus on small areas at a time. I guess that's how I work. It makes it a little less confusing for me to just sort of break it up into little sections and then continue on that way. So I've finished the sky. It's a very light blue. You can't really see it on the camera. And I had a little bit of clouds in there. But then I started the barn. Obviously that is pretty well complete. And now there is a beautiful truck that's behind them. Now this would be considered an extra subject just because it is so bright and it is so pretty that you can't help but look at what's behind them. So a lot of these I will base out in a lighter color and a lighter blue. I am using my Prismacolors again, and I am using the Pastel Matte, which is my preferred paper. Now, in other portraits, I have used other papers. There's lots of papers out there, and that is also another tip that I have for you, that if you are actually looking to, up your game in the art industry, I'd say try different papers. I know it can be a little scary trying new things, and I've also been caught in that. I got stuck on using a paper that just was less than good, and once I switched, it seemed that it wasn't really me that was feeling that looked, made my stuff look cartoony. I just couldn't get the details that I wanted, that I knew that I was capable of. So that's a little tip from me. Try changing your paper, try different papers. Sometimes you can find people in your area that are also artists that have done this before, or you might be able to purchase, a sheet of paper off of them. Or even if you're afraid to try a pencil, because sometimes the pencils can get so expensive. Now, Prismacolors really aren't too bad. I will say that they definitely create wonderful, beautiful pieces of work, and they're really a nice quality pencil, and they're really not that expensive. And plus, a lot of areas, like a lot of chains like Hobby Lobby and stuff, they usually carry the loose pencils. So if you run out of black, you don't have to get online and buy a whole new pack. You can just go and buy a couple of loose pencils. Now, I do prefer the Prismacolor to any other pencil. However, there are harder core pencils, which, you've got your Polychromos, which I also use that. And there are some other ones that I do want to try. And they are just as good. They all have their place. They all do very well. And definitely get on some forums, ask questions. Of course, too, if you are looking to be taught, there are lots of Patreon groups. I personally have one as well, where you can learn how to add these details and how to make step-by-step, instruction by me that will help you to create something, and also help you learn techniques and how to start to finish a masterpiece. So if you look, there's a lot of rust on the car. That was quite challenging. On top of it, there's a lot of shadow behind them because they're leaning on the truck. So it was difficult and different, but it's not impossible. And when you're looking at stuff like that, don't let it you know, give you anxiety or make you shy away from something that's a little bit more difficult. We all need to grow. We all need to learn. And this is a wonderful way, is by pushing your limits of what you think you can do and then pushing outside of that box to get better. So I find that the dirt, I've done so many pictures with like dirt flying, and I feel like dirt and rocks are usually the easiest to do because it's so like abstract. You kind of don't really have, unless there's like a specific rock that they want, you know, in there, but you know, it's just dirt, so it's pretty easy to do. Now his pants were like a grayish greenish kind of jade blue, or jade green, I guess. It's like a greeny blue color, and lots and lots of folds in there. Now when you're doing clothing and folds and stuff, you don't, unless you have like a zipper or a pocket, there's not really hard lines. They're all really like blended with each other, and then they have some higher spots that look brighter and lighter. So, and I decided on this one too. I usually work from left to right and then top to bottom, and I wanted to get the background done because sometimes, I don't know if it happens with you, but it happens with me. I get excited to finish a piece, and then sometimes, you know, you can let things kind of slack a little bit if you get the main characters done, the main subjects, and then you end up not doing as nice of a job on the, you know, other parts. So I did choose to do the background first in this one. Now her jacket was so dark, and it was a blue color, but it was extremely dark that you could barely tell that it was blue. It almost looked black. So in the blacks, it was, you know, easy to add a lot of this black in the dark blue, and it made it look really, really nice. And her shirt was white, so I did base it out with some white, and then I went over top of it with some gray to make it look like it was a white shirt. Now, another tip of white, you know, when you're drawing white, it's anything but white. It's mostly grays and sometimes blues, depending on what, you know, what the shirt is and what it, you know, how it's folded. So I did add on his shirt, he has a dark blue shirt on, and lots of folds here. Now, this was interesting just because there's, in the original picture, he had on like a plaid shirt, and I was told by the client to just make him have a blue shirt, which is fine because that's easier, way easier than plaid. Now, I've done plaid before, but one of those things where it's kind of like you're looking at it and you just don't want it. You just don't want to do it that way, and that's totally fine. But it's all up to the client and what they want. So, and now we're coming about to the end, but when you're working on skin that's smooth, you want to make sure that you blend well. Use light strokes. Don't get real heavy on it. If you do, you could damage the paper and the tooth of the paper. Luckily, this is the pastel mat, so I can draw light over dark. And a lot of times, which in this case I did tape a couple times, and that was helpful to getting the look that I needed. But, you know, if you're using like a Bristol Smooth, you might damage the paper if you push too hard. So luckily, pastel mat's a little bit sturdier. And you see me, I'm taking pictures and looking at it. But yeah, they have really smooth skin, but it's also wrinkly at the same time. So you got to be really careful when you're doing a portrait of people, because the client can really tell if it's really their loved one or not. And I think that, you know, people are difficult, but they're also really fun to learn some new tricks on. So don't shy away from it. Press your limits. Again, if you want to learn how to make pieces like this, you can join me on my Patreon, and it's only $5 a month. So you will work with me on that. And I hope to see you there.